Okay, good. So today we're going to talk about some things related to yoga theory and next with the original hot yoga practice. I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about a learning theory. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think it helps us to understand how our understanding of yoga is going to change and develop now and in the years to come. So basically, Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist. He lived in the late 1800s and passed away in about 1890 or 1980. And if you study psychology or education, you will surely hear about Piaget's theory. And it posits that the way we learn and understand about the world around us is through the development of schemas. So I'll walk you through an example so we can see what a schema is and how it develops. So for example, let's say if there's a girl, a little toddler, and she's walking with her mom and she sees somebody with a four-legged furry creature and she asks her mom, well, what is that? And her mom would say, well, that's a dog. Okay, so then the child now has a schema, four-legged furry creatures are dogs. But let's say the next day they see a cat on the lawn and the little girl says, oh, mama, look, it's a dog. Mama, it's a dog. And the mom has to explain, no, it's not a dog. This thing is called a cat. So that's going to create a state of disequilibrium because she has this understanding that four-legged furry things are dogs. And now her mom is saying there's a cat. So her mom can help the child to accommodate this new information by explaining what a cat is, the similarities and differences between cats and dogs. And the child comes to a place of equilibrium. And then we go and she can assimilate this new information into her schema for four-legged furry creatures. But the next day, if they go to a petting zoo, obviously the whole process is going to start all over again, where she's going to have to assimilate, accommodate more information into her schema for furry four-legged things. And it's just like us. We're learning more and more about this practice in terms of the asana, in terms of history, in terms of theory. Right now we kind of have a schema, 26 of them for each of the postures. And as we grow and learn and study dialogue and have posture clinics, we're going to assimilate, accommodate more information. For example, April's talk yesterday about Salabhasana, I thought it was amazing. And so that kind of, I have a schema, of course, for Salabhasana, but I had to listen to some new information and accommodate that new information into my schema for Salabhasana and come back to a state of equilibrium where, okay, I can absorb this new information. Okay, so that was just to kind of explain a little bit about what's going on with us as we are learning about yoga in the broad, in its more complete sense as a science, a theory, a practice. Last time we talked about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali a little bit. So just to review very quickly, we said that the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali was the first written about the first, 2nd century AD. Of course, yoga is a much more ancient history, thousands of years, we believe. And the Yoga Sutras, we talked about, those are 195 very terse, very succinct aphorisms that really are incomprehensible on their own. But people memorize them, and then with the help of a guru, you learn to understand them. And then later we had commentaries. So starting around the 5th century, Vyasa published the first commentary to help gurus and students understand more about these 195 aphorisms, how they relate to the study of yoga, and the ultimate purpose of yoga being to achieve that state of samadhi and to understand the Purusa, the Atman, the soul that lives forever, that never changes. And we talked about Prakriti as everything. It's a table, it's a lamp, it's your body, it's your thoughts. Everything is Prakriti, everything, except Purusa, which is the soul that lives forever. We talked a little bit about these are the 8 limbs of yoga specified in the Yoga Sutras. So we start with yamas and niyamas. So those are ethical practices for living. It has to do with things like nonviolence, don't steal, don't lie, have discipline in your sexual life, don't be overly hoarding possessions. Develop tapas, personal discipline, develop a habit of study, devotion to God, feeling contentment, and practices of cleanliness. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, if you're studying with Patanjali, if you're studying through the Raja Yoga system, the 8 limbs, you're going to start with these ethical practices. What we in our world and in the Western world think of as yoga is really the asanas, the physical practice of yoga. In the Yoga Sutras, there's only about 3 sutras that talk about asana at all. And those are actually seated postures that facilitate the practice of meditation. I'm not saying that they didn't do any of the more physical things like we do, but they, Patanjali didn't feel a need to discuss it in the Yoga Sutras. Pranayama, it says here breath control, but really pranayama is the life force. So it's about learning to control and move and get in touch with the life force in our body. We're going to talk more about it a little bit later, so I'm going to put that on hold for a minute. Pratyahara is withdrawal of the senses. But these things here, I think, fall very much into the 26-2 practice. I mean, my gosh, asana, we're very particular about asana. We have 26 asanas. We're very deliberate and very precise in how we understand them and how we practice them. Pranayama, we have exercises for moving that life force through the body. All of the asanas do it, our breathing exercises do it. Pratyahara is about withdrawing the senses, and it's not deliberately trying to ignore sights, sounds, or smells, but we become so absorbed in the practice that we just, maybe don't notice them. So if your neighbor's mat smells a little bit funky, maybe you don't notice it as much. In our studio at Yoga Steady, we have, it's at least 2 restaurants under us. So you guys know sometimes the aromas of cooking come up. Do you guys ever smell that when you're in the hot room? I do. Yeah. So, but we're so drawn into the practice, maybe we don't notice so much because of dharana. And I try to encourage people to do this, to really concentrate on the practice, concentrate on the dialogue, on your body, on your breath, to stay mentally and physically present on your mat the whole time. If other thoughts or feelings or concerns or worries come into your mind, just, let them go. Come back to the practice. Stay there the whole 90 minutes. And then the ultimate state of that would be a state of dhyana, where you really are fully concentrating on one thing. So in our case, it would be your practice while you're on the mat. You're just exclusively focused on that. And the Yoga Sutras talks about, in your practice of meditation, you learn this very heightened state of concentration where your mind, you can't, all right, so yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. So at first, your mind can't be completely empty. You can't do that, but you can train your mind to focus on just one thing. And when you can do that, then you're ready to move into these higher states of samadhi, where eventually you get to what's called asamparnita samadhi, the highest state of samadhi, where your mind isn't concentrated on anything, where you really come to the realization of that purusa, that atman, that thing that's beyond prakriti. And if you're not fully getting that today, I've been working on this for years, trying to understand it. So it is okay. My only point in taking you through this, I just wanted you to see that Raja Yoga is very compatible with what we do. Okay, even if we don't directly address some of these things, even if we don't conscious of it, even if we're not always talking about it, it's happening nonetheless, because yoga postures, asanas, are specifically designed to help awaken these processes and energize these processes and fuel these processes. Okay. And I think as we get deeper into the practice, good Lord, our yama and niyama does develop. We do become better, more ethical, more conscious people, most of us. So I think that does develop. Also, last time we talked about Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and we said this was published around the 1400s. Did Hatha Yoga exist before then? Well, of course it did. But the Hatha Yoga Pradipika itself, I didn't bring my copy today, but it was published around 1400s. And we talked about Masterendrath, the fish. So our last pastor in our practice, half lord of the fishes, well, Masterendrath, who either was a fish or lived in a fish, depending upon which story you read, overheard the Lord Shiva tell his lady Parvati all the secrets of Hatha Yoga. And that was passed on eventually to Swami Swatamarama, who published Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And this is really where we come in, because this work posits that if you try to start with yamas, niyamas, and seated meditation, it's just not going to work for everybody. It can make some people feel very discouraged. It can lead to depression, to mental illness even. Moreover, the body and the mind have to be prepared for those high states of samadhi, for coming into some kind of realization of parusa. You have to prepare the body and the mind. So Swatmarama says, we start with asanas. Many of the asanas, and moreover, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is also written in these terse little aphorisms. Later, some commentaries came along, but you had to be with someone, with gurus, people who could teach you these studies, because if the Yoga Sutras is indecipherable, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is very mysterious. You'll never get it on your own. You had to have been taught. And even now with the commentaries for a lot of these practices, if you were going to do some of these things, you would definitely want a guru to help you through it. But the asanas in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, many of them are a lot of them are the same or similar to things that we do. Pranayama, again, is about moving the life force in the body. So there's exercises, breathing exercises, and all these things help to move the life force, the pranayama in the body. We've got mudras, right? So mudras, a lot of times we think of the mudra as gestures done with the hands, like Kali mudra. We do this in our practice, right? Yeah. And Anjali mudra, right? We do that in our practice. And there's many, many of them. We think of it as gesture with the hand, but it can also be something with the whole body. The purpose of the mudra is to create a specific type of prana, a specific type of energy. Okay. And so we're doing that. We're doing that in the original hot yoga practice, and it's happening. Even if we're not metacognitively aware of it, it's happening, right? Bandhas. There's 3 bandhas. There's the mula bandha, which happens when we can tighten the muscles down near the perineum. Uddiyana bandha is really about working with the muscles in the abdominal region. And the one that we work on a bit in our 26 and 2 hot yoga practice is Jalandhara bandha. Yeah, we have so many. And the one we do is a little bit different from what's done in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. But I tell students, hey, choke your neck. We're not trying to torture you, but this is healing energy for your thyroid, for your throat chakra. So that's what the bandhas are about. You lock, it's a bandha. A bandha is a lock. So you lock energy into specific places in the body to create healing at the physical level, and also at the prana level, the energy body level. So that's what the bandhas are about. Shot karmas are practices that cleanse the body. In Hatha Yoga Pradipika, there are 6 categories of shot karmas, and this is where it gets a little funky. This is where it gets pretty extreme. So there's like dauti, people swallow cloth, and then they do a nauli. Nauli is churning of the stomach muscles. I can do it a little bit, but I'd rather have you see somebody who really knows how to do it, and someone with a pretty cute little stomach. So there's people who do it on YouTube, but it's churning of the stomach muscles, kind of like a belly dancer. I mean, these people have phenomenal control of the stomach. So you whoosh the cloth around in your stomach a bit, and then you pull it out slowly, and that's to cleanse the esophagus, the stomach, and so on. There's practices with enemas and urinary things. It's very extreme, except for a couple of things like nauli. I do that a little bit. I think it's nice to massage the muscles. Also, has anyone ever used a neti pot? You know, that thing that goes in your nose? And yeah. So me too. I use the neti pot. That is also a shot karma, you know, because they talk about to cleansing the mucus. There's certain things you want to get. Mucus, 3 things: mucus, gas, and acidity. You want to get those 3 things out of the body, you know, as much as possible, or to a healthy extent. And that facilitates the flow of prana in the body, to get you ready for those higher states of meditation. Another shot karma that we do, actually, Kapalabhati breathing is one of the shot karmas. And so the version that we do is a little bit different than what's mentioned in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, but we do that at the end of our practice. So all this to say, moreover, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is not in any way at odds with the Yoga Sutras. It just posits that in order to achieve these higher states of samadhi and meditation, we need to cleanse the body. We need to get the body ready for that. And it in no way rejects the yamas and niyamas. In fact, all those things are mentioned. Samadhi is discussed at length. So all these things come up in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. The 2 bodies are very compatible. And what I love is I think these works are very compatible with our practice. So that's what I've been really digging into lately. And I'm really excited to see this. I figured they were compatible. I just didn't know how it fit together until I started really buckling into this subject a bit. Now we're going to get into something new. Yoga theory posits that we have 5 koshas, so 5 layers to our being. And we got to be good consumers of information, always know where stuff is coming from. So where is this whole notion of the koshas coming from? Did somebody throw this together for a weekend seminar? No, it's mentioned in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It's discussed in the Yoga Sutras. It's discussed in this body of works, the Upanishads. This is another ancient literary contribution, and it's written over the span of centuries. There's thought to be 108 Upanishads. That's a perfect number in yoga. Most people who would be more familiar with about 10 or 12 of them. I think there's about 10 of them in this book. Not like the Yoga Sutras or the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. They're not those concise little statements. These are actually essays told in the form of stories. Kind of a more engaging read, but you want some commentary to go with it because the thought process is the culture, the time, it's so different from what those of us in the Western world are used to. You'd want a little help to go through it. Ethnic Eshwaran is a great scholar. I mean, he's passed away now, but he understands both Indian and Western culture. He was professor of English literature, so he certainly understands Western culture, but also born and raised in India and very well educated in Indic philosophy, history, and so on. So a good scholar to turn to when you're looking for information. If you ever look at the Upanishads, a great one to start with is the Hatha Upanishad, which is this enlightening conversation between a young man named Nachiketa and the god of death, Yama. Good one to start. Anyway, so that's just to let you know this is legit stuff, the 5 koshas. So this idea proposes that we have a physical body, as you know. We also have an energy body, which is nadis, chakras. You guys have heard of these things, right? So we have this energy body. We also have a mental, emotional body. So this is our thought life, sensory input, decision-making, that kind of thing, just our mental life, our moods, our emotions, our feelings. And then we have a wisdom body, which is kind of a higher state. And when this is discernment and intellect, higher ideals. And as we move into here, then we're getting closer to the bliss body, where we're talking about the Atman, the self, the Purusa. Those are 3 terms kind of used interchangeably. Some works will talk about Atman, some Purusa, and some the self. And I think this fits in nicely with our practice. Certainly our asanas, we improve the physical body. Of course, we all know that. We're stronger, our lungs are better, our heart is better, we're more flexible, our muscles are more subtle. Those of us with physical ailments, like I have arthritis, but I've hardly noticed my arthritis because as long as I go to the hot room regularly, my arthritis in my hands is really quite well managed. And I am diagnosed with arthritis in my knees, but honestly, I've forgotten about it because I never feel it. And the pranayama kosha, through all of our practices that we just talked about, we get this energy body moving. The manayama kosha, the emotional body, we have scientific data to prove that yoga facilitates mental well-being. People are using yoga to treat victims of trauma and people who've been through horrible things, people who need therapy. Yoga is part of their mental health therapy, just like yoga is part now of in the physical world. Physical therapists and doctors are all talking about yoga and recommending these practices. Even me, when I go to the doctor and they go, do you do any exercise? And if I say I do yoga, then they're happy with that. So, and as far as the wisdom body, I mean, I think when we lay the foundation with these 3 other things, that really clears clears us up. If we're not plagued with physical ailments and anxiety and depression and all kind of things, and if we're moving the prana in the body, if you don't move the prana in the body, we experience blockages, right? And prana stagnates. And that in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is the primary cause of illness in the body, disease, mental health problems, physical health problems, when prana gets all stuck and stagnant and it isn't flowing. Kind of like when water doesn't flow, it'll start to develop mold and mildew and get kind of yucky there. So anyways, all these things are facilitated and really lead the way. So if a person wanted to go more into the practices of samadhi that would lead to realization of the Atman, the Purusa, they would be in a good place to do it. Okay, so next thing. Basically, before I found yoga, I was a runner. We have other people runners, right? And I know Kimberly was a dancer. Did any of you do things before you practiced yoga? No, some did. some didn't. Yeah. So reflect on this a minute. Do you think you experienced improvements in the physical energy, mental wisdom body in your other practices? Because I feel like I did. Running did all this for me. Yeah, Kimberly was dancer. You guys who run, moreover, another thing that I've been able to do is hike on, I've had the privilege, the blessing where I've hiked in some of the most beautiful places in the United States. And I experienced all these things while I was there. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Why is yoga different, or is it different? What do y'all think? Do you think yoga is different? Anybody want to chime in?
I think that yoga is less strenuous on your body. So when you get older, it's something that you can still do. Because a lot of people come in who are runners in the past, a bunch of issues
Yeah.
because it's full on their body.
Yeah.
I just think you have to be a little bit more careful when you do other activities.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get hurt doing yoga too, but
Yeah.
I think it's less likely. That's just my thoughts.
Good point.
I think it's the student-teacher relationship that you experience in other forms of exercise that can mirror what you get in yoga. I mean, I feel like in running, it's so wonderful, but you are with your own head. And if you go hiking and you do it in a group, then you're communing with people.
Mm-hmm.
But in yoga, you surrender to the instruction. I'm sure you experience that in ballet, but you surrender a little to the instruction of a teacher. And during the experience in an original hot yoga class, there's not time to question it. So you're able to decompress from this worry that builds up when we're questioning information. And at least from my perspective, we encourage the students to leave and be curious, but while they're on their mat, to be present. So I think that maybe one of the reasons that differentiates yoga from, because I've experienced all kinds of things outside of the yoga room.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to my yoga practice, the things that I experience outside the yoga room, I feel more appreciative of, or I feel like I understand it a little bit better, as opposed to previous to my yoga practice, exercise was just something we all understood you had to do in order to be healthy and fit. And even though I experienced cool things when I exercised, some of it was a little bit self-punishment. Like, I have to do this or else I'm going to be fat, or I have to do this. You know what I mean? Like that's loathing that creeps in a fitness routine that we discourage in a yoga practice. So in a healthy yoga practice, something to think about.
So it enhanced your wisdom body. And I love what you're mentioning about the connections between the student and the teacher and having to trust the practice. And what Bethel said about the, about the wear and tear of the physical body. Anyone else?
I just wanted to say really quickly, I think
Yes.
I'm not really sure because I haven't actually thought about this very much, interestingly enough, but I think that there's in any type of physical practice, like dance or martial arts, for example, yes, there's the element of the teacher, but then there's like the element of a practice where you're actually practicing without consistent instruction. So you're actually dancing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with the teacher-student relationship. So that's like where there's a space where a lot of things are occurring that are very similar to yoga, that are very like internal focused. And but I think that there's something more about yoga that's even more internal than that I don't know how to describe. And so I just wanted to mention that there's another layer of depth around like connecting with oneself in yoga and maybe it's through the breath that really like takes it to a completely different level of self-awareness that's like hyper focused. and not connected to the physical movement necessarily as much. So
That's beautiful. So you're getting really into the pranayama kosha. Yeah, you guys had some powerful insights for me to think about. Oh, sorry. Anyone else?
For me, I feel like it's the thing about it being very scientific, and also the curiosity and the intention, I suppose, and it being scientific, and the question ultimately being that of the self, and what is the self, and through exploring all of these other things with intention in a scientific way. I feel like that's kind of how I see it. I don't know if I'm being clear, but
I think you're being very clear. Yeah, you're right. We have a wealth of scientific information these days in modern times that demonstrates the efficacy of yoga for physical health and mental health, right? We have mountains of information that show a connection between physical well-being and people who intelligence, really. I'm a psychologist, and this is kind of, I study these kind of things. So yes, we know that, and it only makes sense, like we were talking about, that if physically and mentally you are ailing, you're not going to have much mental capacity left over to pursue higher states of the wisdom body. And certainly you're not going to be thinking about anything beyond that. And yes, and you're right. Kimberly said there's something different about yoga. We're experiencing a lot of these things if we run, if we dance. I do have I did martial arts years ago. That hiking, some people are getting, all of us in here, we're like solitaries, but other people like to do stuff with other people. I don't know why. They do things like basketball and softball, all these team things, right? Jennifer's laughing, you get it, right? I don't, but supposedly they too experience these states while they're doing their basketball or their tennis or baseball or football. All this is happening for them as well. So what's different? Well, you guys have given me more to think about than what I did think about, but let me just bring up this slide. This gets a lot into what Bethel was saying. And in this book by Bikram, you got to love Bikram, because other yogis, they're all in some meditative pose on their book cover. Bikram looked like he's going to sell you a car, right? Or maybe he's going to the disco after this photo shoot or something, right? But anyway, on page 45 of this book, and I read this months ago, and how we were talking about the Piaget thing earlier? So I read this, and it just hung out in my head for a while. I didn't really know what to do with it until one day it popped into my head. Oh, this has something to do with the koshas. This has something to do with yoga. But what Bikram says in this book, he says the purpose of exercise, running and going to the gym and lifting weights and all this sort of thing, all those exercise is to reach a fitness goal or a sports goal, regardless of the cost to the body. This is what Bethel was talking about. So, and the purpose of yoga is to heal, using the body to create health. And that is the dharma of yoga. The dharma is like the way, the path, the reason. So, and he goes on to explain this more fully, that people get injured. He talked particularly about athletes and how much they injure their bodies. There might be, your heart might get stronger, your muscles are getting stronger, all this is happening, but at what cost? So he talked about how people injure themselves in the pursuit to reach a sports or a fitness goal. regardless of the cost to the body. So that attachment, what's called raga, attachment is so strong. Do you know there's 5 obstacles to yoga, 5 kleshas? Attachment is one of them. So just overly I don't mean not setting goals. None of us would be in this room if we weren't goal setters. But in type A, and I don't even know you guys. I already know these things about you, right? You're very goal driven, very motivated people. I already know. I don't even have to ask. So it's not that, but it's by not attaching yourself so much to something that you're going to forget about everything else. So basically yoga gives to us, it facilitate, it helps those 5 koshas that we just talked about. It brings us health and wellness, spiritual well-being, physical, mental well-being, without beating us up. And honestly, most people, like we were talking about, people do sometimes get injured when they're practicing yoga, but that's a lot of times happens because of that raga, because they're like, oh, I just have to be able to do this pose and do it better. Or they do some, crazy pose that their body isn't ready for. And if you're doing this, you know what? It's all part of the process. Don't beat yourself up over it. We've all tried to get our standing bow pose beautiful. We've all tried to do these things. It's part of the process. It's a good thing, and it's what sets us up for these higher states. So it's not bad that we're trying to do things. And I'll let you in on my little pet thing that I've been working on forever. There's a posture, not in our 26 and 2 practice, but it's called Mayurasana. It's an arm balance. I've tried to do it at least 5,337 times. I have not been able to do it. But I'm determined that before I exit this planet, I'm going to do at least one Mayurasana. The Mayurasana, just think of yourself as being in a plank pose, balanced on your hands and wrists. Now, switching, this is the vayu. So I said we were going to come back and talk about the pranic body a little bit. There's this concept of the vayus. And again, this is legit stuff. You can read about it in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. You can read about it in the Yoga Sutras. And I'm pretty sure it's mentioned somewhere in the Upanishads. Okay. And in fact, in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali says, when we really master the vayus, the body becomes so light that we're absolutely going to levitate. So there's different vayus, and I love the way I think that this really connects with our practice. So vayu means wind, and it has to do with the way that the prana, the energy, moves in our body and the reasons for that. So I'll talk about Dhyana first. So Dhyana is the whole body. So energy moving out throughout the whole body, all the way to the fingertips and the toes, throughout the entire body. Dhyana Vayu controls the circulatory system and muscle function. If the Dhyana Vayu energy is off, if it's low, we're going to experience mental and physical lethargy, sluggishness, fatigue. We might have joint pain, muscle problems, arthritis, inflammation. If it's strong, our thoughts and feelings flow in an easy, nice, coherent manner. We feel energetic, not hyper energetic, but just energetic, present, engaged, and we can express ourselves well. Postures in our practice that help to facilitate this, pretty much all the standing postures, to include triangle, eagle, half moon, the awkward pose, and balancing stick. All those can help us, regulate the Dhyana prana all the way throughout the whole body. All right. Next one to talk about is the pranavayu. This is in the thoracic region. We're talking about the heart and the lungs. And one of its jobs is to obtain, energy from the environment, or prana from the environment. Our primary sources of prana are the air that we breathe and the food that we eat. Those are our sources of prana, which is why we want to be in a nice, clean environment when we breathe, and why we want to, eat food that's really good and nourishing for the body. You guys listen, ice cream and chocolate, I'm all about it. I'm not perfect, but I'm just saying, that's what facilitates good prana, is good food. That makes sense, I'm sure. So anyway, the respiratory and cardiovascular systems are involved in the prana vayu. Ailments might include problems with chest infections, bronchitis, respiratory problems. If it's strong, we're breathing well, we're strong, and we feel emotionally strong, we feel very stable. So some postures in our practice that help facilitate this is our back bend. Any kind of thing where we're bending the back, manipulating the spine like that. Chest openers like the cobra posture, our back bend, our standing bowl pulling pose, the full locust pose, and the salabhasana, the other locust pose, and supta vajrasana, where we fall back and open the chest, So those are some parts of our practice that help with the prana vayu. The samana vayu, that's in the abdominal region. All of your internal organs are involved in samana vayu. And the vayu moves in a circular manner. And its job is to absorb nutrients from food and convert it into energy. It helps us with processing mental information, and it helps us to retain the essence of an experience, but not hang on to the negative aspects of it. And this is kind of fascinating because we now know through modern medicine that your stomach is full of neurons, just like your brain is full of neurons. There's a whole body of literature to support this. That's why sometimes you feel your emotions in your stomach. There's a great film, I think it's on Prime. It's called The Gut, The Little Brain, something like that. I'll get the title out to you guys, but it's really about this whole body of science that talks about the relationships between digestive health and mental health. So cool that modern science keeps affirming what our yogi people have known for thousands of years. But anyway, some good postures for this might include our Paschimottanasana, right? And also our twist. So our Ardha Matsyendrasana, our half Lord of the Fishes at the end of the practice really help with this. Anything that kind of twists the spine. Also, of course, our wind removing posture, right? So those are some good things for the Samana Vayu from our practice. The Udana Vayu, this energy goes upward right here, and it's all about in the neck and head region. It facilitates reason, logic, intuition, our neurological functioning, facilitates those higher levels of consciousness. So when we're ready, samadhi. Ailments might include thyroid issues, tonsils, nervous disorders, depression, migraines, loss of cognitive skills. When we're strong here, we have clear thinking, good communication skills. So some practices here that help with the Udana Vayu, with this upward energy to the neck and head, includes our breathing exercises. It includes our pranayama, right? Because we're really focusing exclusively on the head and neck in this. I mean, we tell people spine straight, only the arms and head move. We're not backward bending, right? Shoulders relaxed. And other ones is all of our inversions. And in yoga, an inversion just means whenever the head is lower than the heart. So you don't have to get into a handstand like Jen or a headstand or anything like that to be doing an inversion. We start out forward fold. The first time we do that, forward fold, Padahastasana. There it is. We're in an inversion. Standing separate leg stretching, standing separate head to knee. All those are inversions. Even guess what? Rabbit and half tortoise, because our head goes lower than our heart in those postures. So all those are going to be good for Udana Vayu. And then the Apana Vayu, this of course has to do with elimination. So it can be urine, it can be feces. Problems might include constipation, diarrhea, and mentally it's about eliminating unwanted things from the mind, unwanted thoughts, as well as letting, releasing. The body absorbs what it needs from the food, from the air, and what isn't needed is eliminated through, when you go to the restroom, or for ladies when they're on their cycle. So good postures for this, of course, wind removing posture, also Ardha Mastrangajasana, Paschimottanasana, very similar to the ones that work on the Samana Vayu. Twists, standing head to knee. All right, anything that really focuses in on those abdomen muscles. And thank you for listening. And what fascinates me is the stuff is happening even when we're not metacognitively aware of it.
I just found like everything that you shared with us just really fascinating. Like I love to see the connection points between all of these. I just really appreciate the way you did it. It was really accessible. Thank you.
Something that we get in our studio is Jen is she plays the singing bowls, and those help you to connect to your chakras. So even if you're not aware of any of this, you can feel it. You can feel the energies moving in your body when she plays the various energy bowls, the way you play it. And same thing with our practice, all this stuff is happening in your energetic body, your physical body, your mental well-being, and so on, even when we're not fully aware of it. And I love that. So, yeah. Okay, you guys, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See you in the hot room very soon. And we got people still in bed, all snuggled up. Good for you. I know you needed that little time, right? Yeah, y'all have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.